Okay, there we go. We are recording. So again, thank you for being here this evening for our college admissions panel. We're excited to offer this each semester for our parents and our students to ask questions directly of college admissions officers within various college and university settings. So my name is Michelle Swain. I'm the Director of Advanced Academics, and I'll be the moderator for this evening. We are going to start with the predetermined questions, and then we will be able to go into any questions that you might have. For the start of I guess I need to introduce my folks. So let me welcome Dana Marchant, University of Rochester. There she is. Nice. And then we have Minty Nguyen from St. Ed's. Amber Luna from Texas Tech. Oh, and she didn't do the Reckham. I thought you were going to do the Guns Up. Okay. And then Amreen Madhani from Texas State. And we appreciate so much them taking time out of their schedules this evening to join us, and we look forward to hearing what they have to say. So as I mentioned, we do have pre-submitted questions. So we've got about 6 questions we're going to work through. And then during that time, we've got the settings to where you are, as participants, you're muted and don't have your video. But when we get to the end of those 6 questions, we will open it up for general questions from the participants. So at that time, I will open up the chat and allow you to ask your questions there. So just keep track of your questions as we go, and we will definitely get to those at the end. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first question is pretty basic, but it's also pretty general. It's a big question. When you think about the ideal student for your institution, what do they look like? What are you looking for? What are the qualities and characteristics that you look at when you're going through that admissions process? Amber, do you want to start?
Yes, I'll start. So for Texas Tech, we look for a well-rounded student. So we're looking for a student who has, doing well in classes, but also doing like extracurriculars and, community service. If they do have a job, we want to see that as well. I talk to students and they're like, well, I have to do so many extracurriculars. And I'm like, well, pick a couple that you really like and stick with that throughout high school. And I think that looks good on an application to see that, like they've been in band all 4 years, or, they've done choir all 4 years. It does look good. Looks like that you're committed to something. But yeah, just a well-rounded student, somebody that would look well representing Texas Tech.
Thank you. Who would like to go next and address that for their institution?
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Amreen from Texas State University. An ideal student at Texas State is something Amber mentioned, well-rounded, someone who's passionate, someone who wants to explore their options and know that Texas State University is a place for them to, develop new skills, whether it be for future studies or going into a professional school, or even, going into the workforce. Anything that, they're passionate about achieving, anything that has to do with their dreams. We're here to make you succeed at that. So an ideal student for us is someone who knows, I want to do something. What that is, you don't have to decide yet. You just have to come and kind of explore your options and know that we're here to support you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can go. Hi, everyone. I'm Minty from St. Edward's. I am actually not your admission counselor. Judy Carlin will be yours, your go-to contact, but I can link that information later. For us, we are definitely looking for exactly what the other 2 schools have already talked about, but we also want someone that wants to be part of a very diverse community. We're really striving to be very much a destination for social justice, and so someone that wants to be part of that community with us is really great. We're starting a new thing where we have affinity graduations. So we have graduations for Black students, Latinx, Hispanic, Asian students, even pride communities. So please know that there is a place for you here. We do promote ourselves as a Catholic university, but truly we welcome anyone. So really anyone that is open to being in that community, and someone just wanting to really just step up and be a leader, and someone that wants to be involved. And that's definitely what we're looking for.
Well, thank you, Minty. So I'm Dana Marchant from the University of Rochester, which I'm kind of the oddball out here tonight because I am a very out-of-state institution. So the University of Rochester, as you know, is located in Rochester, New York. So yes, let's first get off the table that I'm going to need a student who doesn't mind white stuff falling from the sky during the winter months. Truly, our students at Rochester are unique. The University of Rochester is a Tier 1 level research institution, so we value students who really want to get in and create new knowledge with our professors, do research, not just in our science labs, but in our theater classrooms and with brain and cognitive studies and with American Sign Language, and really research does happen in all of our majors. So we really are looking for students who really kind of want to dig into their material. But we're also one of those schools that you don't have to know exactly what you want to do because you don't have to declare your major to the end of your second year, much like a lot of my colleagues. That's a great question to ask when you are applying to schools in Texas and out of Texas is, do you have to have a major in mind or do you not? Like I said, at Rochester, you have the ability to kind of give yourself some time to do some exploration as we have a very open curriculum too. So I would say, those students who also aren't afraid of trying something completely new because, Rochester, New York is going to feel different than Round Rock, Texas. And so we really want you to be able to kind of open your mind's eye a little bit. 20% of our students are actually international as well. So we have students from Asia and South America and Canada and even Idaho, which can sometimes feel like its own foreign country too. So we have a good mix of students as well. So I'd say that's what we're looking for.
Thank you. So you heard them speak to a wide variety of characteristics, qualities, passions, interests, and hopefully you heard yourself or your students somewhere in all of that. And note that we do have quite a few different groups represented with these 4 universities. So we have Texas public colleges and universities, large and small, with Texas Tech and Texas State. Well, I guess Texas State doesn't want to be called small, and neither does Texas Tech. And I don't remember which one of you has the larger enrollment, but we'll just say Texas public colleges and universities and leave it at that. And then we have private with St. Ed's, and with Rochester, we have out of state. So try to represent a variety of settings for you as participants this evening. Let's go on to question number 2. So we know that there's been a lot of talk about the admissions process and how it may have changed as a result of COVID over the last few years. And some have gone back and some are still doing things differently. So as you think about admissions, what does the holistic admissions process look like at your university? And how does a student's academic coursework play a role in that? And so if we could start maybe with Minty.
Sure. So we have a very holistic admission process. So we do look at many different criteria as we're reviewing your application. So things from your application to your transcript. And please note, we do look at all of your grades, not just your junior year ones. I think that's something that people kind of have a misconception on. We do want to see how you've done overall in high school. But junior year is obviously something that we focus on because that's what you're currently doing. And then we have a letter of recommendation. I know that's going to be a question later on, so I'll save my spiel for that. And then we have an essay, and an essay is a really great way for us to kind of see who you are as an individual outside of school. So I would definitely use that to your advantage. But yes, we look at everything very equally. And so please know that whatever you do, just put your best foot forward and just, feel the most comfortable and be confident in your application. And that's really just going to pay off later on.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Minty. We have a holistic review also, and we look at everything. So we have supplemental items like the essay, letters of recommendation, and resume. I always like to tell students, submit an essay. We want to know a little bit more about you. Want to know, just where you come from, because when we're looking at the application, all we're going to see is grades or like extracurriculars, but we're not really going to see you. Letters of recommendation are also very good, and I enjoy reading them. I think it does make a difference. And resume, if you are if you have a lot of extracurriculars that you want to talk about, I think a resume is a really great way to have us look at all of that. And yeah, we look at you holistically, look at all your demographics. Grades are a factor in that as well. We look at all the grades, yes, we'll look at junior year grades, but we also want to see an incline, like we want to see like, okay, they may have not, done too hot or whatever freshman year, and they're gradually getting better, stuff like that. So we definitely look at grades for sure.
So I will say from the University of Rochester's perspective, yes to all of the above. 2 points I would bring up that we should probably talk about in this section as well is that, a lot of institutions in Texas and around the country have also gone test optional as of late. And so that is part of the process when you're planning to go to college. You can choose whether you want to send your ACT or SAT test scores to us. I always get the question, like, how do I know if I should send those or not? The best thing you can do, in a holistic admissions process, I still think families are looking for answers of like, but will I get in? Will I not? Ask the admissions reps and the admission offices that you're working with, like, what's the mid 50% on the GPA range? And what's the mid 50% on if students did choose to submit ACT or SAT scores? What's that mid 50% range? Mid 50% is going to give you, the top from 25% of those students are going to be below that. 25% is going to be above that. So it does at least give you a little bit of an idea of what we might be looking for on the holistic side, besides all the great things that we've already talked about with your essays and your activity section and other things. So that's kind of all. Number one is, I'd say, ask for that mid 50% range if you're a little bit unsure and want some help that way. And the second thing is to really, some institutions also use what's called demonstrated interest, which means that we would like to know like how you engage with us. Part of the process is that, you can stop by and see us at a college fair if, when the fall comes around and we're out on the road again doing college fairs. If our institutions offer interviews, did you sign up for an interview? Because sometimes we like to see that you've kind of taken that step out, and we like to see that you're engaging with us, so you're very familiar with us. So then when we hit that admit, that we know that you are very comfortable with who we are as well. Some institutions don't do this at all. Some just like that doesn't matter to them as well. So I would say that's just another question you can ask when you're talking to admissions offices about the holistic process.
To piggyback off Donna, Texas State is also test optional, and that word gets thrown around all the time, and a lot of students don't know whether the upcoming year they will be test optional or not. So do look at some universities' assured admission standards. What assured admission is what are the minimum requirements or qualifications you need to guarantee admission into the university. So Texas State does it based on your class rank and your minimum SAT and ACT score. And since we are test optional, we're not looking at that SAT and ACT score. Yet if you do submit it and you qualify, you will get assured admission. But if you are, in the top 3 quartiles of your graduating class and don't meet those standards, we do look at your holistic, your application in a more holistic way. What we're looking at, like everyone said, is your grades, your extracurricular activities, and on our applications, our letter of recommendations and essays are optional, but we do highly recommend it because that could be, what makes or breaks your application for admission. So, even with those universities that says essay optional, letters of recommendation optional, do send them in because it makes your application so much more stronger than you realize.
All right, thank you all. And I think you all ended up hitting on all the things that I wanted to make sure that we highlighted for our families. It's a complex process, but it's not a complex process if you just go step by step and fill everything out and get it all in. So that last question talked a little bit about the balance of showing who you are through your academic classes and then showing who you are through your volunteer or your service extracurriculars. But let's think more deeply about that right now, because I know that sometimes kids will really focus on a very rigorous academic schedule. They'll want to take 6, 7, 8 college credit courses a semester. When you think about that balance, what is your advice for finding the balance between that rigorous academic schedule, some really quality extracurricular activities over time that are going to show some dedication and develop them as a more well-rounded individual. And then that social emotional wellness that we know is really at the forefront of conversations these days after everything everyone's been through for the last couple of years.
So I'll first start off with just saying that we understand that we have all lived through this crazy thing known as a pandemic the last 2 years. And so, we've had a lot of students come to us and say, but I didn't get to do that doctor shadowing that I wanted to do last year. And I wasn't able to do this, that, or whatever. We get it. We understand. I think many students were able to pivot very well and find other things that really did shine on their applications. Maybe they took up some more responsibilities at home. Maybe you picked up crocheting. Like, that's a unique factor to you that you kind of made that pivot. Please, students, my number one advice to you is just find the thing that speaks to you. If it's if you're one of those people that can balance 5 different clubs and you play a sport and you can, do this, that, whatever, fabulous. You be that person. If you are somebody who just loves robotics so much that is like drives your soul and you just do 4 years straight of robotics, that's okay too. There is no perfect application that we look at. It's truly about you and highlighting who you are. But please also just make sure you're taking care of yourself. And I just don't ever want you to do something and use the excuse, I have to do it to look it on my college application. Because oftentimes we can see the difference in the activities that you truly love and the activities that you just phoned in for 2 years, or maybe you just joined your senior year to kind of highlight your application. So take it easy on yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't say any better. Honestly, that is wonderful, wonderful advice. Take care of your mental health first and foremost, because everything else will follow through. The mental state you're in, and then, your participation in these activities or your school and your social emotional wellness, it will show. It will show. So take care of yourself, really learn who you are, and find those things that complement you. So when you're looking at, applying to college, and you're like, I want to be an English major, or, a science major, and you have like a couple of, activities that you're involved in, and just show like, how much you've grown in it. So something could be like, I started my freshman year in this organization, and, this is what I did over the course of 4 years. And I have, leadership opportunities that I went through. And, I've gotten these experiences through this. Personalize it to yourself, so that you can find enjoyment in it, and it looks good when you're applying to colleges, because your passion in these activities and your involvement will shine when it's genuine, as opposed to when it's forced for a certain outcome.
I agree with what they said. I just be kind to yourself. I think that it is very stressful when you're at your junior and your senior year, and you're like, wait, like I didn't do X, Y, and Z. But the best bet is just to be kind to yourself, and just to know like, hey, you're doing the best that you can. And if robotics was like the only thing that you did, and you're like, but I was very passionate about it, we can see that. Write it in the essay, or talk about all the things that you did with that. I think it just be as detailed as possible in that application. I think that it is hard to balance all of the AP classes, IB classes, and then plus you got your family and stuff like that. So just be kind to yourself. Know that that we're all human as well. Like us as admissions counselors understand that y'all are under a lot of stress as well.
They're taking all the good words. Like, I don't know what else to say. But long story short, yes, like, just know you don't have to be the best at everything. You don't have to do all these extracurriculars to make your resume longer, because we're going to factor in, how many hours have you participated in such organization? And it's better to say, I spent like 120 hours a year in this organization, rather than saying, I did 1 hour a week in this org and this org and this org. And so, yeah, find your passions, be nice to yourself. Don't feel like you have to have that competitive energy. Like, my friend is like in all these other organizations and they're a leader, don't feel the need to also, compete with that. Because again, you are all different and everyone is special in their own way. And you can find your way to individualize yourself through your application. So use that essay to your advantage. Use your letter recommendations, just be who you want to be. And again, like I said before, feel comfortable and confident in your application. Don't feel pressured to submit something that you think is perfect, because like my colleague said, there's no perfect application. Everyone is so different, and we review things all the same, but also differently. We understand this is a different time as well. We've all just lived through COVID, and we know times have changed. And maybe like when you're online, you were not doing as well in classes than you are in person. But now we get that. And you are in a perfect space for you to like prove yourself that, yeah, I'm a great student. I just, wasn't in the most comfortable state of mind because I was at home, and that's okay. And so please know we do consider that. We really, really are very nice to you. I promise we are not mean when we're looking at applications. We just want to make sure that you're putting your best self out there. And that's truly what's going to make you shine compared to other people.
I always say we work for the Office of Admission and not the Office of Denial. So we are looking for more ways that we can admit you than to not. So please know that. We're on your side.
I love that. The Office of Admissions, not the Office of Denial. That's fantastic. So what I also heard you say is that it is much more important to see commitment over time than it is to see that last minute rush of let me throw as many activities into my schedule as possible. And I think one of your colleagues that wasn't able to join us this evening in the past has said something about the 8-8-8 rule, that in 24 hours, you should spend 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours doing school, and 8 hours doing other things. And so whether that's service or volunteerism or clubs and activities, that you should spend a good portion of your time to achieve that balance. You need to spend a good portion of your time in each of those endeavors. And I think probably where our high school kids are missing out is that 8 hours of sleep. Bless their hearts. So let's go on to question number 4. So we know in our district, we offer 4 different kinds of college credit. Students can take AP classes, they can participate in the IB diploma program, they can do on-ramps coursework through UT Austin, or they could also go to ACC, Austin Community College, and engage in dual credit work. So when you think about those 4 options or opportunities, do you value one of those more than the other, or are they pretty much equal in the admissions officer's eyes? Do you just want to see one of everything, or do you want to see all of one, or does it matter? Does it matter which college credit coursework they're taking?
I go ahead and take that one first. This is an amazing topic because I just went to, if you guys are familiar with TechEd conference, and one of the sessions we had was about, dual credit, AP credit, having college credit before coming to an institution. And a majority of our discussion centered around how a lot of students are, filling up their classes with all of these APs, IBs, and community college dual credit, but then not transferring over to the institution or having trouble transferring over. So while at Texas State, when you're taking AP classes, IB classes, and or dual credit in the high school level, we don't say, oh, we prefer one or the other, as long as you do well in those classes, and really show that you've taken the effort to take rigorous classes and that you've challenged yourself academically. Now, if you want to, outshine, that is great, and take so many community college classes before coming to a university, that is also great. The danger there is, will it transfer? Will it be applying to my degree? Am I just taking a lot of classes because, I just want to look good on a college application? Or can I actually, use these classes? Because a lot of community classes, they cost money. There's a financial portion to that. And a lot of students kind of get mixed up in the idea of taking as many to look as good as possible. But you want to be strategic about how you use your dual credit classes, and make sure to do some research on the core classes of the college you want to attend, so that you have a better idea of what kind of classes will be the best for you. Because we don't want you to take so many great ACC or community college classes only to come in and admissions or advising tell you these are going to take up elective spaces, and then you lose the opportunity to take one of those fun classes at university that everyone talks about in the media. So, AP, IB, dual credit at the high school level, great, but don't overdo it, because that in the future could cause more long-term problems than, helpful to you in the present.
Great advice.
That is a great way to say it. I agree. There is definitely a misconception of like, oh yeah, I need to take every single AP class in general. Sometimes that can harm you. If you're not doing your best in the AP class, we kind of see that on the transcript as well. So please know, only do it if it's up to your strengths, but also it's like up to your interest in college as well, just like she had mentioned. For us, we don't have a preference at all. It really doesn't make too much of a difference. We just want to see that you are challenging yourself, and that is a great benefit as we review your application, because if we see that, oh yeah, they want to challenge themselves, they're taking a little bit more higher courses, we also can use that information to bump you up as far as merit scholarships, because every student that applies to St. Edward's is automatically considered for merit-based scholarships. And so if we see that, oh yeah, they're really challenging themselves and they're doing well, then it's like, hey, maybe let's give them a little bit more money because they deserve it and they did the work. For us, once you're a senior and you are applying to St. Edward's, you're more than welcome to do a transfer credit evaluation. And essentially what will happen is we'll do a little review of the classes that you've taken, or future classes that you want to take at ACC, or just in high school in general. And then we'll see what is transferable. So we can provide that information for you. Typically we'll do it once you are admitted, but if that is something that you need to know to help make your decision as far as what school you want to go to, we're happy to do that for you. But yeah, overall, as far as AP, IB, UT on-ramps, dual, it does not matter. We just want to make sure that, again, you're putting in your best foot forward. You're challenging yourself, but you're also making sure that you're committed to making sure that you are okay mentally, and making sure that you are just putting your best foot forward and doing whatever you can to make yourself stand out, but also ensure that you are okay mentally, because we just want to make sure that you're not stressing over so many difficult classes just to, again, get ahead of the game, because that can also harm you in some sense. So please find that balance that works best for you.
I agree. For Texas Tech, there's no preference. I think that if you are taking your English courses and you're like, well, I'm doing really good in just regular courses, I'm making 90s, I'm doing well, let's do an AP or whatever you would want sophomore year and see how you do. With Texas Tech, if you are accepted and you do have dual credit courses, you can have a transfer advising meeting with us, and we can kind of go over that transcript and see what will transfer over and what will help with your major as well.
So yes to all of the above. Being a very far out of state institution, I will tell you, I'm going to like to see those AP scores or those IB scores. Unfortunately, friends, you will get some credit in the admissions process for having challenged yourself with the rigor of your high school classes, but those credits are not going to actually transfer to the University of Rochester. If you're taking AP classes, if you want that credit transfer, we're typically going to want to see you scoring like 4s and 5s. We also very much value an IB curriculum because we actually do have you write us a little statement about your extended essay that you just spent all that time working on as well. So we have a specific scholarship for our IB students as well. So I just say, much like my colleagues are saying, is we love to see you getting, we get the question oftentimes of like, do you want to see a C in an AP class or an A in a regular class? I think we kind of jokingly say we want A's across the board, but really, we want you to show us your strengths. We want you to take those classes that you feel are just making you shine throughout this entire process.
Thank you all. So I heard you say focus on your strengths and interests, because you're going to do better in those courses. So if you're going to take advanced courses, focus there. And then I also heard you speaking about beginning with the end in mind. And I've got a little personal anecdote to share on that. I have 2 girls at Texas Tech. So I've got a freshman and a senior. And my freshman is in the business college. And when she was in her junior year, we were trying to decide what to do about economics, because we have AP economics in the district. We have a dual credit economics option. And we wanted to figure out, where should we go with that? we reached out to the College of Business and they shared the degree plan and talked to us about the fact that in business, there is a combination economics class that is macro and micro combined in the same class. Had she taken AP or dual credit, it would have been an elective and she still would have had to take that class. So she took regular economics, for which she was very grateful because economics isn't always her favorite topic. But it really is important to begin with the end in mind. And we've got quite a few resources available for our district stakeholders relative to these 4 options. If you are interested in finding out more about the college credit bearing coursework in our district, we have a plethora of information located on the Advanced Academics page. So if you go to roundrockisd.org and then go to the A to Z index and click on Advanced Academics, you will see specific links for each of the different kinds of college credit courses, but you'll also see a comparison chart, which is a side-by-side document that compares who teaches the class, how is credit earned, how is credit transferred, what constitutes credit in the course, just all kinds of different questions answered for each of the 4 types of college credit bearing course options. You'll also find a really neat infographic on each one of those that kind of boils it down to the essence. So I highly recommend that you go there. Another thing that I don't think was mentioned is for Texas public colleges and universities, there's some legislation out there that kind of dictates what happens with AP scores and IB scores. So if you earn a 3 or higher on an AP exam and are going to a public Texas college or university, by law, they have to give you college credit for that course. It doesn't say what they have to give you credit for, but they do have to give you credit. So an example there is my daughter got scored on the AP biology exam, but she got credit for the biology for non-science majors instead of the biology for science majors. So she will be taking the biology for science majors because she's my older daughter is a kinesiology pre-physical therapy student. So you really do have to think about that and look. One nice thing with AP is if you Google AP credit policy, then you can go and look up your college or university that you're looking at, and it will tell you what AP courses they accept, public or private. It does it for both. What courses they accept and which one of their courses that will count for, and will it count as credit only? Will it count in your GPA? It has all that information there. IB is typically a 4 or above on the 7-point scale, whereas AP is 3 or above on the 5-point scale. And then with dual credit and with UT on-ramps, those are typically going to be your core courses. And so on that same A to Z Index Advanced Academics site, we have a crosswalk that will show you the different courses that would count for your English 3 class, the different courses that would count for your U.S. History high school class. But you can also go to the Texas Common Core numbering system, which is I may have said that wrong. It's the course numbering system for colleges, and they will have the equivalencies of what, if it's this course at this university and it's this course at this university, what the common courses are for that. And we have that in, I believe we have that in that crosswalk as well. And then the last thing I'll say before we move on to the next question is, as Dana mentioned, when you are talking about dual credit, and really when you're talking about any of these, out of state and private, you really have to talk to the college or university because it's very much up to that institution as to what they will take and what credit they will give, or if they will just give you an attaboy for taking a hard schedule and still have you take their own classes. So just a few anecdotes from personal experience. And let's go ahead. And I know that Minty, I think, was alluding to this earlier. It may have been Amreen. What is the role of the recommendation letter in the admissions and scholarship process? How does that play into the process? And what are some helpful hints relative to that recommendation letter?
Okay, awesome. I really do like this question. So essentially, a letter of rec is a great way for us to get another perspective of who you are as a student, but also as an individual. And so I would be strategic in choosing someone that really does know you. I think some students in the past, they have chosen their counselor who just kind of lists things, what they've done, but they don't really know the student that well. And so I would say choose someone that maybe like tutored you, choose a teacher that you really liked and you did well in choose a coach, really just someone that really just invests their time in getting to know you as a student, but also as a person. Again, this is just going to make your essay and your application so much stronger because it's actually just going to kind of like, what's the word, like support and validate the thoughts and things that you put on your application. If you said that you were like doing some community service, they can kind of talk about the things that you've done, or maybe they worked with you on a project, or they saw that you did really well and like led a group project in their class. That's really just going to benefit you. And we see that as a way for us to be like, okay, so the student isn't just listing things, they actually did them. And it really is a great way for us to kind of like provide more insight of what it's like to, kind of have different eyes of who you are. And it's just a really great way for us to kind of just, be like, oh yeah, if this person thinks that they're great, we're probably going to think they're great too. And so I would say just, pick someone that really does know you. If you're not sure, talk to your counselor and just be like, these are the things I've done. And then kind of get to know them. If you put in the effort, just like a little bit, it's going to make a big difference. But yeah, I would say the best advice would definitely be to choose someone that really does know who you are, because that just means that they're going to make you shine. And like when people like you, they're going to want to like be like, yes, this person's amazing. They're going to hype you up. And that's kind of what you want. So think of it as someone that's really just going to, also tell you how great you are.
I will say that some institutions will require certain types of letters. Some institutions, we want to have a counselor letter. And I know sometimes I get pushback from students saying, but my counselor has a caseload of 500 students and I've met with them 3 times. There still is just a form, if you're using the common application, that your counselor will fill out and send to us to at least give us some context. Some institutions really want you to have only junior level teachers write your letters of recommendation. Some have, a limited amount where you can submit 3 letters. Some say it's an unlimited amount. So make sure that you talk to the institution and know what they're looking for. I will love you too if you only send me like 3 to 5, like please. I've had some students send me like a dozen. Guess what? Like I'm skimming those last like 7. So just, we love you, but we don't need to know every facet of who you are. Think of it in terms of we often want the letter recommendation when we talk about it from the counselor or the council report to give us context to who you are in your high school. And then we want letters of recommendation from your teachers to tell us who you are in a classroom. So that's why we ask for these different types of letters through the process.
Yeah, so for Texas Tech, we do, it's optional for a letter of recommendation for the admissions process. As far as like our scholarship application, there is not a requirement for a letter of recommendation. But with that letter of recommendation, I do tell my students, 1 or 2 is fine. Like Dennis said, no, don't send like 7 or 8. That it is a lot. But I just recommend it being from like a teacher, coach, even a pastor who's known you, somebody that can really speak well on your behalf. You don't want to ask somebody who you've only met once and then they send us, a bare minimum, 2-sentence letter of recommendation. You want somebody who can speak so highly of you and just really, speak great things about you. I love reading them letters of recommendation. I think it's so cool. I think you kind of just see a little bit more about the student and you're like, okay, like if this counselor or this teacher is hyping this student up, like I want her to come or I want him to be at Texas Tech.
The same with Texas State. Our letters of recommendations are optional, although on some scholarships that they are required. So do keep in mind for scholarship purposes that you may need to procure one from one of your teachers, your counselors, whoever you feel comfortable requesting one from. But what I would advise is if you academically qualify for assured admission, that maybe not to spend too much time stressing over the letter of recommendation, because we already know that, you'll you'll get into the university without that. But if you're a student who is more academically, does not meet the assured standards or may need a little bit more stronger application, for those, I do recommend that letter of recommendations be something they think about, because having that can strengthen your overall application and kind of give us a new perspective while doing the holistic review. So, know what tier of admissions you are in, if you have assured admission, if you're close to assured admission, or man, I might really need that help, and then decide accordingly, because asking teachers can be really stressful. Some kids are shy, some are not sure if their teachers will write them a good recommendations. There's so many horror stories out there about it, so just keep it on just keep in mind what kind of admission you believe you will have, and then make that decision when time comes, whether or not you want to submit that letter of recommendation. But always keep in mind, scholarships, do ask them, so it might be good to plan for those anyway.
Okay, I think that was all 4 of you. One thing that I've heard in the past relative to this as well is to make sure that you're asking well in advance. You will not get a good letter of recommendation if you ask the day before it's due. You'll get a couple of sentences. And then I've also heard that if you include your resume, that is often very helpful for whoever is writing the letter of recommendation for you, because they know you, but that gives them more context to put in there, especially if they have a caseload of 120 students or 500 students or whatever the number may be. So including that resume and getting it to them in advance is often really helpful. All right, we're going to go ahead and move to our final question. That's a preset question, and then we'll open up the chat for general questions. So we're hopefully not going to have this on our list of panel questions much longer, but knowing that we are still kind of in the midst, towards the end, hopefully, of this pandemic situation, how has your admissions process changed as a result of COVID-19 over the last few years?
I think I'll go first. The biggest impact I've seen is, during COVID and a little bit in post-COVID world as well, is you hear, like I said, the test optional a lot. That has given more students to shine holistically, as opposed to, being represented by a standardized testing score. So I think it's helped a lot of students, get admission into universities that, if they were to send in their test scores, it might have been a little bit more of a gamble to do. And then I've also seen merit-based scholarships also increase, because when we do merit reviews for scholarships, we see, okay, an SAT or ACT score will only give them an X amount given which tier they fall into. But if it's merit-based and we are genuinely impressed by the application, kind of think that, this person's values or beliefs aligns a lot with Texas State's values and beliefs, some students do end up getting more merit scholarships that way, as opposed to, just sending in your SAT score and then just being pulled into an automated list of whichever amount you get. So it's been good for students to get more opportunities at university levels, as well as more scholarship money when they're not purely defined by their SAT and ACT score.
I totally agree with that. I think for Texas Tech, one of the big things is test optional. We just announced that we're going to be test optional up until 2025. So we're really excited about that. And I think it does open a lot of doors for students. I've had meetings with students where they're like, I don't have to send in my test score to get an admissions decision. And I'm like, no, if it doesn't reflect you as a student well, you have the option of not submitting it. And you could just see the sigh of relief that they have, where they're like, oh my gosh, so that it is possible for me to go to tech, or to get that admissions decision. For our merit-based scholarships, it is based on high school rank and test scores, but now it is we're test optional for that as well, so you don't have to submit test scores to get a scholarship. So I think that's really cool for Texas Tech, and for students. I think that it really opens up a lot of doors for students, for sure.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about, our process didn't change too drastically when COVID came along. We were test optional for about 2 years prior to the pandemic, so we kind of had a good starting base to know how to read an application without a test score. I think prior to that, so we were very happy to have already kind of been engaged in that. We will not be going back to testing. Students are welcome to send those to us, but it's not going to be required in our admission process at the University of Rochester. I will say one thing, if I can give a little piece of advice when it comes to COVID-19 and the college process. I know I'm an out-of-state school, and so most of the time I'm reading students who apply using the Common Application. On the Common Application, there is a portion on there where, and I hope it stays for next year is what I'm hoping as well, where there's a small section where you can actually write down how COVID-19 possibly affected you, your family finances, how it kind of drastically changed your life. And we would love you to use that section to describe kind of the COVID experience for you. I saw the first year we were in COVID, students kept it very much like that's where they put all their information about like this is how it affected me. This last year, I feel like a lot of students were writing their college essays about the effect of the pandemic. And it is an essay topic that you could use, but I would say I would way rather learn something more about you personally rather than the pandemic experience in your college essay. You have 650 words on that personal statement essay to shine, and I'd really love it to be more about your strengths and not your struggles, I would say. So that would just be like a piece of advice I could give about the pandemic and college admission.
I also usually give that advice as well. Again, it's all about making yourself an individual. And if every person around us is talking about COVID, I already have fatigue on it. We all do, So it's like, let us learn more about you. Let us learn about your passions. Maybe if you have struggled, tell us about how you overcame those struggles. For us, as far as how things have changed in COVID, like Rochester, we actually started with a test optional right before the pandemic. And so we're going to actually continue that and have that a permanent thing. We want to make sure you're very confident in submitting your application. And if that means if your SAT or ACT score doesn't really define who you are, don't feel the need to share it. It could benefit you if you have a strong score, but it also could be like a disadvantage if you share something that we don't really see as valuable. And so again, it's just making sure you feel confident in what you do. And then for us, as far as just reviewing your application as a whole, I know a lot of students, like they do use the Common App portion to talk about COVID, but some have talked about in their essays how this time has struggled for them. And we take that into consideration. If your grades during your sophomore year weren't great because you were virtual, that's okay. You have your junior and senior year to make up for it. And again, it's just making sure that we see that growth. And I know all of my colleagues here can agree. We just want to make sure you're progressing and you're just doing better and you're making yourself, putting yourself out there, putting your best foot forward. And we just want to make sure that you're doing whatever you can so you're okay. So then once you are here and at your chosen university, you're going to strive and be your best self. And so please know we do take into consideration that the times have changed. It's been a struggle for a lot of us, but we want to make sure that you are not staying stagnant. We want to make sure that you're growing. You're like, okay, I know what it's like now. I have adapted to what's happened. Let me see how I can make this experience better for myself. And so whether that be taking on a hobby that is really something of your interest or just continuing your passions. I know for a lot of our students, they took on a hobby during the pandemic, and that actually was something that they talked about in their essay and their application. And it was great. I learned about a student that built a 3D model of a little wheelchair for a hamster. And that's so cool. Who would have thought that you had the time to do that, right? And so, yeah, talk about that. Talk about things that have really just impacted you in a good way. So yes, we've all been through it, but please know we're all just trying to make sure that we're here, we're at our best self and that best state of mind. And how you do that is just moving forward and doing whatever you can to be better.
Thank you. And thank you all for all of the detail that you put into your responses. One of the things that I want to make sure our participants understand is when y'all are talking about test optional, you're not necessarily saying don't take the test because the test does help you if it's a strong score, but also a lot of scholarships, both within universities and independent scholarships, as well as other kinds of opportunities, take that into account. And also admissions for things like honors colleges or specific colleges within a university specific programs within a university may want to see those scores depending on where you're going. So again, always begin with the end in mind and see what that college or university wants. If you want to go into a biomedical program at University X, you might see if getting into their biomed program requires a certain SAT or ACT score. So it's always more than just getting in the door of the college or university in general. It's also looking at that level of detail. So that is our pre-set questions. So we're going to go ahead and open up. I need to go to our settings, and I am going to change. Hang on just 1 minute while I change the settings here. So now I am making it where you can, let's see, you can send a message, and you can also turn on your microphone if you would rather ask a question in person. And I'm going to go ahead and stop presenting. Well, let me make sure that I don't have any other. Nope, that's it. There's our beautiful students. So that would be the last slide. So I'm going to go ahead and stop presenting so that you can see each other a little bit better. And Dana has gone ahead and put her contact information in the chat if you would like to access that, as has Minty, and well, all of them have put their information in the chat. Are there any questions from our participants? Wow, you guys were so thorough that there are no questions. Some of you may be processing or trying to find the question that you wrote down. Oh, there we go. So Lauren is asking, how important are foreign language classes in high school?
That is a great question.
Oh, no, you got it.
Okay, perfect. For St. Edward's, we do look at a foreign language course that you've taken. Rigorous-wise, it's okay if you take a regular like Spanish or French class. We don't mind that. But we do look at that because we want to make sure, because St. Edward's is a liberal arts community, we want to make sure you have a very well-rounded education. And that means taking a language course both in high school and in college. You can test out of it. That is definitely an option because we do have a lot of international students as well. But yeah, we do take that into consideration because, again, it's making sure you're being part of this very diverse community. And I think for a lot of colleges, we just want to make sure that everyone is just well-rounded overall in their studies.
I would say to take that extra year, take that second, third, maybe a fourth year if you're really into it. I always just frame it as, I never want you to be excluded from being able to apply to an institution or be accepted by an institution by something like that. Some schools, I've worked for a variety of different kinds of schools over my career, and I will say some of our schools I work for want just 2 years of a language. Some want to see that you had longevity in that, so you did 3 or 4 years in that language. So I would just say, take that extra year if possible. We I would say minimum 2 years. Love to see that third or fourth year if you're really into it.
And I know a lot of public universities, especially in the state of Texas, do have foreign language as a core requirement of their degree plan. And a lot of times the high school, if you take 2 years of consistent foreign language, can satisfy that core curriculum for your college degree. So it will be beneficial to you to have those foreign language classes. But if you don't, then you may be required to take them when you come to either Texas State or any public university in Texas.
Okay, and we have another question. Do you need to be Christian to apply to St. Edward's?
Another misconception. We are actually predominantly Catholic, but no, you do not have to be any specific religion to go here. We actually have over 34 religions represented on campus with our current undergrad class. So please know you can be any person you want to be on this campus. I know it's really hard when you kind of just see how St. Edward's is kind of interpreted. If you're in the Texas area or in Austin area, a lot of people kind of look at it as like, oh, you have to be Catholic. But we are truly just making sure that we are promoting social justice and diversity and inclusion. And that means in religion as well. We do ask that every student does take one course on the subject of religion, but that is just, again, an overall picture of your liberal arts curriculum and making sure that you are having a much well-rounded and very beneficial education and experience while you're on the hilltop.
Awesome. Okay, so this is a great question. What SAT or ACT score range would add value to admissions? And my immediate guess is going to be it depends on what the range is for each of the colleges or universities, but I will let you guys address that one.
So yeah, for Texas Tech, we have an assured admissions like breakdown, and I'll link our admissions website in the chat. But there it'll have your assured admission is going to be based on high school rank and test scores. So we'll have the test score for an ACT and a test score for an SAT. So if you meet that requirement for the SAT and you have that high school rank, you know, you're automatically admitted, no questions asked. I know for top 10%, you are automatically admitted to the university. And so we'll just need that. But I'll put that link in there just so if anybody wants to look at it, look at our breakdown, you can look at that.
This is what I was referencing when I was talking about the mid 50%. You know, some of our state schools have very specific guidelines that they're following, and that's fabulous for other schools, maybe like at the private side. Ask for that mid 50% to know if it's going to add value to submit your scores or to not submit your scores. And also work with your high school counselors. Your high school counselors have a very good pulse on knowing if your scores are going to really shine at certain institutions or if they will not.
And I know personally, when we went through that process, my daughter had a very limited vision of where she could go. And then when she started looking at those scores, she realized that she had a really good SAT score and that she could open up her options a little bit broader and look at a wider range of colleges. So it all goes back to doing your research, right? We did get a question about, it says we could get 2 foreign language credits during the middle school, so 1 or less class during the high school will be okay with college. Remember that if you are taking the middle school courses where you take 1A in a year and 1B in a year, that only counts as 1 high school credit. So you actually would have to take year 2, which would be a 3rd year of the language, but it would be a 2nd credit of the language. So that's how we do it in Round Rock. That's a little bit different in a couple of the languages. So talk to your high school counselor, talk to your middle school counselor. They'll be able to provide you with more specific guidance on that. We also got a question, do we have to have taken all of the main 3 sciences, biology, chemistry, and physics?
So for us at Texas State, we prefer that you take 2 of them. So you could take biology and chemistry, or chemistry and physics, or biology and physics. But we do require a total of 4 science classes. So 2 of them could be biology, chemistry, or one of the 3. But you would need 2 upper level science courses as well. Now, if you take all 3 of them and then have an additional science course, that works for your 4 credits as well. So you could do biology, chemistry, physics, and then bio 2, chemistry 2, aquatic science, any of the general science electives you may have. But it does not require that we need all 3 of them, for at least for Texas State, 2 of those and 2 other advanced electives. As long as you have 4, then you should be in good hands.
Anybody have a different answer, or is it pretty much the same across institutions?
Pretty similar. I think for most cases, we do see biology and chemistry taken your freshman and sophomore year. And then I've seen a range of astronomy, forensic science, aquatic science, anatomy, physics, or whatever it is. I haven't been in high school in a couple of years. But yes, really, it's just as long as you take 4 by the end of your senior year, you'll be just fine. It's just a matter of making sure, again, that you are completing your graduating requirements. So it really does depend on your high school. So whatever Round Rock ISD or your high school expects of y'all, then we just want to make sure that you're fulfilling those requirements.
Awesome. Now, this is a very intriguing question. Do you think college resources like U.S. News are accurate about your schools?
Oh, can I please? Y'all, okay, this is how I talk about you. Okay. Oh, it's hard because you see the same names of schools popping up on all the same lists year after year. This is how I always view it. On social media, when you get like a fun little posting that it's like all the top 10 vacation spots in the US or the top 10 places you need to see before you die. Great, super fun. That list was put together by one perspective. You may look at that list and be like, there is nothing on there that I like and nowhere I want to go on that list. And you know what? Same thing with the college list. You need to ask yourself your own questions. You need to ask, do I want to live in a cold climate or do I know I'm a hot weather person? Do I want to go to a research school or am I more into the liberal arts? Do I know exactly what I want to major and I do want to do some exploration? You need to ask yourself these questions and not go look at a big old book that comes out that tells you what's good and what's bad. So please, this is your personal college search. It doesn't need to be what your best friend is doing. It doesn't need to be what your grandpa did. This is you. This is your goal.
And I think there's a variety of tools and resources out there to help narrow that down. I know College Board has Big Future. Our guidance and counseling offices in the district have various tools and resources that our students can avail themselves of to really drill down. I know with my oldest daughter, it started with she wanted a Division I football team that she could go to, and then narrowed it down from there and wanted in-state. Like you said, you can ask it if give me the rural schools, give me the suburban schools, give me the schools under 40,000, give me the schools over 40,000 or 4,000, or I want to go at least 150 miles from home. I want to go 500 miles from home. Like, just give me all the schools. So there's lots of different tools out there to look at to get that kind of information. Looking at our questions, there's a question here on determining class rank for high schools that do not provide class rank. So I know that you guys typically will strip our transcript down and recalculate. Do you want to speak to how that works?
So at Texas State, we will assign that student a rank. There's a process that we go through where we analyze historical data based on the grades we have and what a student is most likely to rank in given that database. And then by then we will go ahead and assign an appropriate rank to that student. What that process looks like, I am not very familiar with. It's done in a different department with all their jazzy computers and stuff. But at the end of the day, we do assign a rank given the transcript.
So ours is for St. Edward's is a little different. We don't specifically assign a rank, but for how we recalculate your GPA is going to be based on your high school alone, rather than comparing you to all the students that are applying to St. Edward's. And so we really are just looking at data from like the past history, like how have students with this GPA, how have they ranked as far as like scholarship wise? Like depending on how your school is and how rigorous your course load is, we'll determine it by that, but we will never really just put a rank on your for each applicant. It's just a matter of how you compare to other students within your class and those that have been at your high school previously.
So for Texas Tech, it's similar to Texas State. We rank internally. So I know I have a lot of students that'll get nervous. They're like, I don't have a rank. I don't have a rank. And so we rank it internally. Like she said, it's from another department. I'm not sure how that goes, but it is ranked internally.
The University of Rochester does not look at your class rank. That's because, certain states, for our public schools here, like that is a determining factor of funding and other things that has to be used. If you're looking for out-of-state schools, oftentimes we are not going to take that into consideration. Sometimes I'll see it on a transcript and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's super great. That student was ranked number 2 out of, 572, and I'll mark it on the application. But I'm not looking for that as a point of data that all of my students have to have.
Okay, thank you. So another question asks, how are the academies viewed by colleges? Do they count as credits? And some background information. Round Rock ISD has the academy opportunity for our students, and we call it wall-to-wall academies. So every school has multiple academies that students can select from, whether it's the Visual and Performing Arts Academy, or if it is the STEM Academy pathway. There's many more that I probably will misname if I keep trying to name them all. Does that count as anything? I know it gets them endorsements and it gets them performance acknowledgments and those kinds of things, but does that count as anything during the college admissions process?
So I can go ahead and speak to that. I graduated from the Round Rock ISD myself. I graduated from McNeil High School, and I graduated under these academies as well. So I'm very familiar with how it works. Unfortunately, when it comes to admissions, it looks fortunately, it looks really good. Like they see you got these endorsements. And if you're someone who's like, career path driven, and say you are a biology major and you graduated with the Health Science Academy, and you can see, you did your practicums and you have your certificates, and you've done, classes like medical terminology and things like that, you can get credit for those as long as they transfer. And if you have taken them with the dual credit system, they may transfer as an elective, or they may just transfer as medical terminology if that is offered at your university as part of your degree plan. But the unfortunate part here is a lot of these academies will have you take specific classes. Like I know I also graduated with the Business Academy at McNeil, and we took a entrepreneurship class, and it was an ACC dual credit class. Unfortunately, that did not transfer over to my degree plan. I couldn't use it outside of an elective. So that was a bummer. But when I did apply to business school, like they saw that I got endorsements in this field, and they did, look favorably upon that. Similarly, when your kids apply, and they have those endorsements with specific degrees, it does add another layer of achievement to your overall application. But majority of those classes are not really college classes or dual credit classes, so college credit is not something they will receive for these academies. But for students who are heavily participating in their chosen academy, they do have really good resume boosters, networking opportunities to go ahead and find resources that will help you in the admission process. So I know something that the Performing and Visual Arts Academy does is they help you build a portfolio. And now you can use that portfolio when you're applying to a performing and visual program at any university. So, they help you build those structures, but credit-wise, if it transfers, you get credit. If it doesn't transfer, you may have to do that once you arrive at the institution.
Thank you. And you kept that little negative being a former Maverick to yourself until just then. That was a great little surprise to share. So we love it when our own kids come back and are able to share their experiences and inform the future generations. Did anybody else want to speak to that, or did she pretty much cover it? Okay. All right. So the last question we're going to take this evening is, I wonder which one is more important to college admission: higher GPA with easier courses, or lower GPA with rigorous courses? My son loves challenges, but as a mom, I'm a little worried about his GPA. And actually, I don't mind speaking just as a personal anecdote first, and then I'll let you guys give the professional perspective. I have two students. They are both, or two daughters. They are both students at Texas Tech. They both did not have any trouble getting in. One was a selective achiever and was at the 50th percentile in her class. Her GPA was not what I wanted it to be, but she did very well on the ACT and got automatic admission, and is now making somewhere in the range of a 3.5 or a 3.6 in her senior year. So she's doing fine. The other was a very hard worker, but very, very involved in extracurriculars. She took a mixture of AP, on-ramps, dual credit classes, worked really hard, but because in our district currently the dual credit classes do not count for GPA and ranking class, she was, and neither did her fine arts classes because they are not core or world languages. She ended up graduating at the 33rd percentile. She did not get automatic admission to Texas Tech, but she did get in on holistic review and is making a 4.0 and is extremely happy. So from a mom's perspective, I was really considering what I do for a living, I was really concerned about GPA and ranking class. But looking back on it, the rigor of the courses was really what allowed them to have a successful collegiate experience and to go in feeling like they could handle what they were tackling in college, and that they had the skill set to do that. So that's the mama bear perspective. And now I'll let our experts speak to that.
I can start us off. So as I mentioned when we were talking about GPAs, when it comes to looking at just an overall GPA, if a student is taking more AP classes and et cetera, and obviously there's sometimes a 5.0, 4.0 GPA depending on how each school works, we can adjust that GPA based on what they've taken. And so essentially, if y'all are normally on a 4.0 GPA scale, we can just basically convert it and kind of just see, okay, the student took about 3 or 4 AP classes. And so we'll kind of just adjust the scale a bit, because that means they've taken more rigorous classes, which means they're probably taking on a little bit more challenges in school, and that's okay. It really, again, just depends on the situation. As long as they're not like failing, honestly, it is okay. Like, please don't concern about it too much. Again, there's a huge misconception on, oh, I have to be first in my class, I have to have the best GPA. But truthfully, if you're challenging yourself and you're doing the best that you can, it's going to be great at the end. And so please don't worry about it. If the GPA is, fairly good, we'll take it. We always say like a typical holistic review average student is about A to B, but we do take C's. That's okay. Sometimes that happens. No need to stress on having the best GPA in the world, because again, we can kind of review the whole holistic application. We understand that students are different comparative to each other within high schools, but we're also different between high school to high school. And so we're more than happy to kind of, move it around, shift things just to make sure it's easier. And we understand that everyone's different. And so, yeah, don't worry about the GPA a little too much, Mom. It's okay.
And a great thing about Texas State, actually, for our admissions process, we don't even look at GPA because each school factors their GPA differently. And sometimes, curriculums can get weighted more than certain curriculums. So we just look at just how well you do in classes. And it's always a treat to see, students try doing those challenging AP classes. Now, you don't have to do all 5, but if, you want to do 1 or 2 in 5 of those classes that you do AP, overall that looks good. We see, okay, this person's trying to challenge themselves in whatever field they're passionate about, and kind of want to go the extra mile, and we can see that effort reflected in the grade. So like Min said, try your best in those classes. Don't stress too much about GPA, and just have a good balance between the two. That way you're not overwhelmed with needing to have all those AP classes, but also performing well in the classes that you do decide to, challenge yourself in.
I'll also note that it's also the same for scholarships as well. Like, we will look at the GPA, but again, it's your overall grades and the classworks or the coursework that you've taken. And so, as long as you're doing your best and they're challenging themselves, but they're also just maintaining like fairly good grades, they'll be just fine.
I always say I love A's and I love B's. C's make me pause for a second, and I'm going to look a little bit deeper into maybe what happened, what the trend was there. And, at the University of Rochester, when we recalculate and slice and dice your GPA, we're not only going to look at your GPA, but we are also going to kind of give you a ranking, like on a 1 to 5 scale, of how much you challenged yourself with the classes that you took. So, if you're coming in with like a 3.3, but my goodness, you took 8 AP classes, that's going to help balance yourself out, but if you had a 4.0 and I only see you take maybe 2 classes, we're going to kind of look at that at a scale too. So it's all kind of moves and it all slightly depends.
All right. Well, any parting words from any of the panelists, or do you feel like you've covered it pretty well? All right. Well, then thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experience and your expertise. And those of you in the audience, thank you so much for attending. This session has been recorded and will be posted on the district website for future reference. So if you have a friend who missed it, you can tell them that they can go on in a few days and be able to find it and look at it. And if you have any questions that you would like answered from a district perspective, feel free to reach out. Again, it's Michelle Swain. Email is michelle_swain@roundrockisd.org. So thank you all very much and have a wonderful evening. And I'm going to stop recording.